Good afternoon from Riyadh. I've got a very unique personality sitting with me today who has been there and who has done it all. And this is how I explain you. I think you are one of the persons who have built his career all around the world, including the UK and the US and now in the Middle East. So a very unique career, a very unique profile. You are a person who has stretched the boundaries of finance to basically step into the CEO role, which is again very unique when it comes to the world of finance. Someone actually moving out and stepping into the sphere of CEO. So Ahmar Azam, he is the former CFO and the current CEO of Lijam Sports Company. Is the largest here in the MENA region and one of the largest in the world. So welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Mazam, for inviting me.
I have read about it. I have known you for a couple of years. I have heard you delivering excellent presentations on public forums, on finance-related conferences and CFO symposiums, and it has been really insightful and incredible listening to your thoughts on the finance subjects. So just tell us about your career journey. Let us know how far you have come along the way, and where you started, and how you grew into the current CEO role.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for your kind words. And frankly, the honest truth is that before you ever heard me, I heard you. So I probably attended several conferences from where you were speaking. So, and of course, I always appreciated. And I think the most recent one was a few months ago in Riyadh, where you gave a talk on digital transformation. I think it was a conference organized by Marcus Evans, a CFO conference. But anyway, again, thank you so much for your kind words. But the journey, I don't know, I would probably call myself jack of all trades rather than anything else. But you're right, there was a method to the madness. My life did start back in the UK, where I did my undergrad from a university called the London School of Economics. Very focused on finance, accounting and finance, because that's has always been my passion from school days. And then of course, then I did my chartered accountancy from UK. Right around that time, we were at the cusp to decide what do we want to do. And for most people, America, the land of opportunities, always attracts. So we decided as a family, I was already married at the time, but in early 99, we decided to move to the US. Again, took all sorts of, I would say, scenic route. Continued in public accounting with Deloitte for another few years. And then after spending 8.5 years in public accounting, I decided to move out into industry, where I did a few things. I was the corporate controller for a listed company. It was an industrial clinical research organization. Then an interesting opportunity showed up to get into risk management for a newly listed public company to establish their internal audit department.
Right.
It was the largest real estate finance company. Then again, change of career. I got into banking, although because I did banking audits back in my consulting days in audit firm. So joined an international bank to be the head of their bank for a couple of years. Then got back into the profession. I was a partner for a consulting firm where we focused on CFO advisory, outsourcing of compliance and internal audit work. And then as some of my friends back then, or my partners in New York would tell me at the time, that I had a shrink moment. I decided to drop everything and decided to move to the Middle East. Again, the reason is because originally from Pakistan.
Right.
And I wanted to be close to my mom, and never lived in Pakistan, so wasn't sure if that would be the right thing to do and move the family. So we came to the Middle East. I was working for a large industrial group. That was my first job as a CFO. Did that for about 3 years. And then almost 4 years ago, got approached by Lijam Sports Company, which is my current employer, to lead the corporate transformation process, prepare the company for a successful IPO, and also be the CFO at the time. So that was the journey, and then last few months now acting as the CEO. I'm not acting really, I'm the CEO of the company. So I was very fortunate for the opportunity. So that's been my career journey, frankly. In the meantime, I'm, a couple other things I do. Yes, I do enjoy public speaking. I'm on the board of International Cricket Council. I'm on the audit committee, independent board member of the audit committee. I'm also on the advisory board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. So, do that on the side, as something that I'm quite passionate about to contribute to our profession and the sport that I'm very passionate about.
Beautiful.
So that's the long and short of my journey.
Very rich and colorful profile. Someone who actually grew up and who got trained and who built up his career all around the world in a global way and then ended up in Middle East. It's absolutely fascinating here. So Ahmar, it was really interesting to learn about your career journey and what you have done and where have you been, and what are the things that really have influenced in your career journey all along the way. So can you shed some light on the most important factors or contributors towards your success in not only the CFO role, but also in your transition from CFO to the CEO?
Okay, thank you. I think that's an excellent question. I'm not a conventional CFO. Conventional CFOs would usually come out of an accounting profession and then, work through the finance function to become CFO.
I'm sorry to cut you, but you've got a very pleasant personality, which is unlike of a conventional CFO, so please carry on.
Well, takes one to know one, huh? Or should I say calling the kettle black? Or there was a reverse of it. But Muazzam, thank you so much for saying that. But frankly, I always wanted to be in the driving seat of an organization. I decided to pick chartered accountancy as a profession because when I was growing up in Pakistan, most of the folks who were running organizations as GM or CEOs were chartered accountants. And same is true in UK as well, where most of the CEOs of FTSE 100 companies have come from the finance background, or they are chartered accountants or similar qualification. So that was always the plan. So as a result of which I wanted to make sure that my experience of 20 plus years gave me exposure across different areas. Yep. So for me, if I look back today, and as I said, there was method to the madness to my career development. I wanted to make sure that as soon as I could, I got exposure to the board. So that was the first thing I wanted to do so that I can handle the board, I can understand. So that is something I got exposed to in my early 30s, for instance. Of course, Big Four is the best place to get training. So anybody who is aspiring to be a successful finance person, in my personal opinion, the best of the skill set acquired were with Deloitte while developing my career in New York, and Big Four, best office to be part of. So really helped a lot in grooming of personality and professional development. And as I said, different exposures. I think today a successful CFO, oops.
That's all right.
I apologize for this.
Busy CEO.
Well, sort of. The worst is when you don't recognize a number. But anyway, so as I was saying, that for anyone aspiring to be a successful CFO, or eventually a CEO, because really that's what I think, all CFOs should be aspiring to be the CEOs, and I think if we get a chance, we'll talk about it. They must get exposure to a lot of non-conventional CFO type of areas. Be it running a business at some point in time, even a small business, being an advisor to the CEO or to different organizations in board capacities. I think risk management is very critical for a successful CFO and eventually becoming a CEO. As a matter of fact, when I used to be the GM of a bank, we used to joke, and this is so many years ago, I'd say 13, 14 years ago, we used to say that we spend 60% of our time doing risk management and 40% of the time doing banking.
Wow.
So that's how even back then the banking world had transformed. So I think a variety of exposure, in marketing, in supply chain, IT for sure. I think CFOs need to develop expertise in IT, ERP implementation, so on and so forth, because I think this is where, and most CFOs would, but if people are planning their careers, they should definitely check these boxes along the way so that one, they become the CFO en route to becoming a successful CEO.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Ahmar, you have worked in the CFO role, obviously, before you graduated into a CEO space. So how has your experience been like getting to understand and getting up close with technology, managing digital disruption, which is not only reshaping the business models and the supply chain models within the businesses, but also it's reshaping the finance organization structure. So how important do you think it is for a CFO to hone in their skills in the digital transformation area?
Okay. I think we are in the digital age, right? And assuming that all finance leaders are trained and equipped and mentally ready to embrace the digital transformation, I think it would be a misconception. So I would say that if you are a CFO today, you could either be ready or not ready to embrace the digital transformation, to leverage the digital transformation, to make anything out of the digital transformation. And the reason you wouldn't be, if that is the case, or one wouldn't be if that is the case, that would be primarily because of the redundancy of the education system today. I think every 4 to 5 years, our education becomes redundant. I mean, I remember when I did my chartered accountancy, and I remember the senior partner one time coming to my cubicle and asking me specific questions on UK GAAP at the time. And I said, and I gave him the answer, and I said, well, I'm shocked that the senior partner is coming to me and taking my input. He said, Ahmar, you are the most hottest person right now in this office because you just passed the exam. So who would know the gap better than you?
Most eligible person to answer the question.
Most eligible person to answer that question. But then the person asking me that question was the senior partner of that office, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that even his education had become redundant, right? What he acquired several years ago.
Absolutely.
So I think today the best tool that we need to acquire is the tool to be able to retool ourselves, right? I think that is the most important tool. So that is, the fact that whether we are ready or not, but frankly, the ones who are ready are the ones who understand technology better. The ones who understand as CFOs, who understand that there is a purpose of data. I think data is available conventionally. If I look at my seniors, for instance, or even some people from our age as well, most people think of finance as explaining the hindsight, explaining the past.
I always call it newspaper publishing.
There you go.
So what has happened, you just publish it as a newspaper. So please.
That's right. You're 100% right. I like that analogy better. So let's say for me to come and read the newspaper in front of you, okay, there was a time and place for it, but going forward, is there a space for that? Why can't the person read the newspaper themselves? Is the question that I would ask myself even several years ago, right? So again, understanding there is a time and place for hindsight clearly, right? We understand that. But the best thing we can get from hindsight is to draw meaningful insights, to be able to explain the foresight, or better, predict the foresight, predict the future.
Absolutely.
So I think the more important, the best, or the most important relevant role for a finance leader is to be able to explain or predict the future. And what better way to do it but by using the digital tools that are available, be it first of all understanding the ERP, what data that comes out of it, how to leverage it, and then the BI tools that are out there, the cognitive tools that are out there, because I think that's where the direction where we're going. Now in terms of what data to get, what type of, how do digitally minded CFOs think, I think there is enough data available on the internet or on the web that one could acquire that basic knowledge that is required, and then if somebody wants to get into that space, then there are other platforms through which one could acquire. I haven't gone through any formal education in terms of understanding digital transformation, but it's all hands-on. It's being aware of what's out there and understanding data, so to be able to make better decisions.
So Ahmar, you worked in the CFO role and then you transitioned into the CEO space. You must have had opportunity to work on the ERP implementation or any other form of digital transformation in your organization. How important do you think is the mindset of a digital oriented CFO and also the digitally minded organizations?
Good. I think again a very good question. I think a digital-minded CFO, or any CFO really, should be looking for problems and ways to solve it. Now, of course, back in the days, the tools were different. Today, the tools are different. Today, you have ERP. Today, you have other BI tools. Today, you have cognitive tools available to help you solve the problem. But the CFO should have those antennas up there, looking for problems to be able to solve it. The other important thing I'd like to mention is that everything that shines is not gold. I'm sure through your career, you've learned the same thing. I've gone through maybe 4+ different ERP implementations where I've headed those ERP implementations myself. But the one thing that we know is that most ERP implementations don't succeed. And the ones who succeed are the ones where the proper planning and analysis has gone beforehand,
Absolutely.
right? Because everything that shines is not gold. I think that's the mantra that we should always remember. Last thing I'd mention is that why do we acquire these tools? To be able to achieve and improve on certain metrics. Every organization has their own metrics that they are tracking. Some general ones would be revenue optimization, customer satisfaction, right? So on and so forth. Controlling costs. These would be the key metrics for any CFO to be looking at. And if the tool allows you to achieve it, then that's the right tool. If the tool doesn't allow you to achieve it, then that's not the right tool. We see digital data, or data for that matter, as an R&D type of an area. So in my organization, over the last several years, I've used FP&A as a place for my MI, as well as also for creating data. Sometimes we create data to start making things out of it, so it's more like an R&D tool, is how I would describe some of the key characteristics of a digital-minded CFO or a digital-minded finance organization.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, moving into the CEO space, you have seen both sides of the table. You have been a CFO, and now you're working in the CEO capacity. So you exactly understand how it feels to be on the both sides of the table. How do you see that with the change in the role of CFO, where they are expected to be involved more in the HR and strategy, shaping up the culture, leadership, building the cross-functional capabilities? How has been the relationship dynamics changed between the CFO and the CEO?
Again, a very, very important question. I think I personally actually believed that long time ago, is that the traditional CFO role would not exist in the future. I mean, I couldn't really predict effectively that we would be replaced by digital transformation. But I always felt that a smart CEO would acquire the required finance skills to be able to make those qualitative and those quality finance decisions that an organization needs to make, which traditionally the CFO would make and the CEO would more focus on developing business and leadership and running an organization. So as a result of which, your earlier question, so the method to my madness was that I wanted to acquire those skills to be the CEO, and I had those leadership skills which would enable me to be able to run an organization. So it's either going to be one of the two. Either the CFO would acquire those skills to be the CEO, or the CEO would acquire the skill to be able to make those financial decisions. Because I think the first cut of information would really come from the ERP of the world.
Yep.
I'd like to give you an analogy. I was the first batch that did the case study of ICAW exam, and gracefully I failed for the first time and I passed for the second time. But the key learning, it was a very interesting paper. It's a 100 mark exam, but you have about 175 marks or so that you could technically score. Of course, nobody could score 175 points. You are given with a 200 or 300 stack of page stack of deck, and you have to figure out the question, and the answer is also there. Yep. But the learning from that, Mozam, is there used to be A mark, used to be a B mark, and there used to be a C mark. A mark was to identify all the issues that exist within the problem that is presented.
Yep.
If you were a fast reader, vertical reader, it's a 4-hour exam, you still couldn't digest everything. And if you were, miraculously you could do it, you couldn't, just by identifying all the issues, you could not pass the exam. Just for identifying all the issues, identifying all the A marks, you couldn't pass the exam. Mm-hmm. And the B mark was to analyze it, which you get 2 marks for it. C, for developing it and coming to a conclusion and making proper decisions. You get 3 marks for it. So the reason I give that analogy is that today the finance world with ERP of the world, the ERPs that are available, BI tools that are available, the A and Bs are already covered through the tools. We get paid to make the right decisions, the C points. So the focus is to be able to add value, be able to, and again, this is the journey. Now, the transition from a CFO to CEO, it can be augmented, you can plan it like I tried to plan it, or it happens along the way. Yep. That you realize that for me to continue in my current position, to be a successful CFO, moving on to CEO, or to be a co-pilot. Before better analogy is before I became the CEO, I became a very good co-pilot to the CEO.
Right. That's, I think, absolutely essential.
Right. So becoming a co-pilot requires the skills that the CEO has. Study the CEO, study his mindset, fill those gaps, be his blind spot watcher, right? And the board sees it, the CEO sees it, and of course, then one develops into the CEO role.
You also worked in one of the CFO advisory firms back in the days in the US. So how relevant do you think is the outsourced CFO services in today's world and in today's economy? And what sort of businesses, large, mid-size or small, in your opinion, you think can get a benefit from the outsourced CFO services?
I built a business for about 3.5 years. I was a partner in a firm in New York doing primarily this business, and for the CFO advisory piece, I was a president of that subsidiary. I'm a firm believer of it. Now, of course, I've been out of that space for the last 7-8 years, but I'm not out of the finance space, so I know the need for that matter. So I'll give you a couple of examples. First from a practitioner perspective and then from the client perspective. From the practitioner perspective, I think when you're in advisory capacity, sometimes the world changes on you. When we started it, we were looking at FP&A outsourcing, we were looking at a lot of things, but then it was 2008 when we added this line of business to our advisory service, and the world had collapsed back in the US at the time. So a lot of outsourcing stopped completely. So at that time, we reinvented ourselves to become a strategic advisor, because when organizations were going down, in the banking sector, US has more than 10,000 different individual banks, not branches. Many of those were getting into cease and desist orders. So we started working with those, banking for that matter, and other organizations as well, but banking as an example, to come and help the board transform, write their strategy, write their finance strategy, write their capital expansion strategy, assist the CFO with the gaps that they had sometimes to manage the loan book for that matter, or policies and procedures, and many other areas where perhaps the CFO was not equipped. So we made more money at that time doing strategy advisory than our conventional work. But we never lost sight of our core competence, which was CFO advisory. And then of course the CFO advisory work also came along, and when economy started improving, really in 2010 is when we started seeing the CFO advisory work really blossom, and we started making money. Good segue to how things could be right now from a client perspective. See, today the world expects you to operate like an A-class organization regardless of your size. Right? Be it the regulators, could be your clients, could be your suppliers. Today, if I want to, I could be a small supplier, but if I want to work with Amazon or Walmart, there are certain standards that I've got to adhere to. And I cannot go and play my small company card that, I cannot invest in good governance, I cannot invest in compliance, I cannot really hire a muazzam for that matter because I can't afford. So so you have an opportunity to work with Amazon, but because you have a product, but you don't have the infrastructure to support. So how do you do that? Maybe it's cost prohibitive to have a full-time CFO like a muazzam for that matter. But I could always buy a muazzam's time for the particular problem that I have to solve. Maybe muazzam can come and negotiate on my behalf as my advisor. Yeah. So I think there is a great space. I think that space is expanding more and more because of the fact that the expectations of delivery have just increased so much. Today, as a public listed company, fortunately we are the best pick for 2018 for mid-cap companies in Saudi Arabia. our IPO has been one of the best success stories of the last couple of years. But we're still not the Almarais or the Sabics of the world. But the market expects us to deliver at the same level. We cannot use a mid-cap or another company, a small cap card that, we cannot afford to have the infrastructure. So for organizations like us, we can tap into the resources that are available out there through a CFO advisory forum.
Correct. What a pleasure talking to you today, Ahmad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Azam. Pleasure.